into it, Gordon. And let's start with some good news. It's not every day that we get to start this show with good news. Clemson Track and Field has been reinstated. Congrats to all the folks over there who worked so hard to do it. They released an announcement last night that said that indoor, outdoor, and cross country are all coming back. Your reaction?
Surprised. It worked. Russell Dinkins and that whole Clemson Save Clemson Track campaign, they're able to make enough noise and get enough people attention that it's just straight up that they were able to reverse. I mean, I think they started getting involved with like the politics of it. They started like suing them. They got, state representatives involved where it wasn't just a tweet storm. They got actual people. They filed lawsuits. So they went above and beyond by just signing a petition. They went down like legal route, and it worked. And I think if Clemson's alumni and fan base and all that just did nothing, just accepted it, this would never have happened. It clearly only happened because of efforts on the side of Clemson and the supporters, which is great.
Mm-hmm. And as people were quick to mention on social media, this is 4 programs now that Russell Dinkins has been involved in: Brown, Minnesota, William and Mary, and Clemson. If you're a university administrator and you cut track or cross country and you get an email in your inbox in the future from Russell Dinkins, you should just be very worried that whatever statement you put out previously, you might have to go and backtrack. Gordon, this one was as explicit as we've seen. In the initial release, when they cut it, they said, this decision is final. We understand that people might be upset, but we are not in any way, shape, or form going back on this thing. They could not have been clearer, and yet the program got reinstated. So now I'm to the point where, when COVID first broke and we knew that schools were going to be in precarious budget situations and people were going to use that as a pretext to cut track and cross country, we thought, hey, some programs are going to go and then it might start this tidal wave. It's to the point now where I almost assume, and this is a credit to Dinkins and everybody else who's working on this, I almost assume that they're going to end up backtracking at this point, because this is, again, 4 programs now where people have put out strong statements, universities have put out strong statements saying it's final. And there's been other programs too that have been cut. There's other programs that have cut and then brought back one of the seasons, like indoor or outdoor or cross country. But all in all, the effort has been very successful. And typically we say, okay, people are going to raise this issue. People are going to kick up some dirt, but then the money will win out in the end, or the people in power will win out in the end. And it's just been remarkable how that tide has turned. I did see, and I know you probably thought this was interesting too, Clemson's like, well, we thought initially we were going to be 2 million short, basically is what they said. But we did some, we looked at the numbers again post-COVID, and now we have the money.
Yeah, I think they're probably still going to be 2 million short. I think they're just going to have to figure out a way to make up that 2 million elsewhere. I don't think they recognize, it wasn't a problem after all. I think they still probably have a financial problem, but they realize this wasn't the way to fix that financial problem. You mentioned that when this first announced back in November that they said it was final. This was literally the quote: "We appreciate and acknowledge the potential efforts to support or to reinstate the men's program. However, the decision is final, and Clemson Athletics will move forward with just 16 sports." And then clearly, when someone says it's final, it's not final. They say, like, it's you still have a chance until she puts a ring on it, right? Isn't that the phrase or something like that? Well, there's no ring, it's still available. But like, hey, man, Russell did not take no for an answer. And even if this didn't get reinstated in April, like say they still went and they kept it going into next year, and they actually didn't have track next year, and they kept on going, eventually Clemson probably would have been like, oh man, this is a headache. Like, all right, you're coming back next year. Like there was no endpoint for the people on the Clemson side to stop fighting for it. They're going to keep
Mm-hmm.
going until they get what they want, which was
Mm-hmm.
clearly shown. So
Dinkins mentioned in one of his tweets about how the release didn't say anything about the fact that there was Title IX lawsuits on both the men and the women's side. He also mentions the fact that Clemson's going to end up spending more money, saying they have to pay the lawyers, right? They have to pay for all 3 seasons of the men's team. They've agreed now to add a new women's team, and then they have to deal with the financial aid, which he said will likely cost them millions of dollars. So if the goal in here was to save money, they did not achieve that objective, to say the least. But listen, bottom line here, I'm just ecstatic for the athletes who are on that team, who go to that school, who are in the midst of eligibility. We're thinking about transferring, having their experience uprooted. Now they can stay if they want to. We obviously are close friends with a Clemson alum, Ryan Fenton, who many of you guys know. So this was a cause that was taken up by alums and current athletes and people from the outside, like Dinkins together. So it was pretty. I don't want to say unanimous in terms of the rebuke, but like if you had told me when this thing first happened, when they first said they were canceling it, that this would have been the outcome, I'd say they basically got what they wanted here. And they're going now, they're adding another women's sport as well too. So if you're for more opportunities being created, the activism won out here. So congrats to them. Very exciting stuff here. It's just good to start with good news, right? It's good to start with some happy news for once. We had 3 months of opening shows with this program got cut. And now we're to the point where we're like, hey, this program got saved. And this one, Minnesota was pretty egregious, right? Because it was a Power 5 school. But then you go to Clemson, right? And we know all the success with their football team. It just seemed like it was ratcheting up. And it was going to get to a point where it was going to be a school that not only was a big name, but had current huge implications on NCAA track or cross country, like at this second. And that's where we're trending. So big win there for Clemson track and field.
Got a comment in the YouTube comments. Patrick McCormick says, I think I can find $2 million pretty easy in the Clemson athletic budget. Yeah, I think they probably put $2 million in like their 4th weight room for the for the second string linemen, probably.
Yeah,
they probably have weight rooms for the second string in football.
I know there was limited spectator capacity last year, but has Clemson football ever been more popular as a product? Has that ever been more marketable? So. Right? This is at its apex, which, again, it just made the decision to cut it for financial reasons that much more egregious. Any last thoughts on this before we move on?
Do you think Trevor Lawrence goes number 1 next week in the NFL draft?
I do, mostly because of this decision. I think the two things are related, 100%. And I'll do that on our.
Do you think how awesome would have been if he had like a Save Clemson Track undershirt underneath his suit? That when he got drafted, 1st overall, he would just like open it up and write Save Clemson Track. Well, that would have been. Now he can't do it. Now he's got to return the shirt. I'm not reporting that was going to happen. But maybe they knew that Trevor Lawrence was about to show that shirt on national TV and forever be like in every photo ever, forever. And I think they're like, oh, that's the last straw.
The pressure campaign worked.
Here's the question.
All right.
What does the Save Clemson Track and Field Instagram and Twitter accounts do now? Like,
well, they put it to past tense. It's saved. Clemson
saved
cross country.
But like, what do you tweet about?
Tense. Yeah,
did you like just throwback Thursdays of like moments when you were trying to like? Do you just like stop tweeting?
I think it's a good problem to have. Maybe it turns into the next. There'll be another program, I think.
And then they transfer the account.
Yeah, it's smart, right?
To that program.
Keep the people. Yeah, keep the people who are still involved and engaged in the issue moving on to the next one, because this is only building up. All these wins just build up momentum. And Dinkins, he was on the pod with us when this decision was first announced with Fenton. You can go back and listen to that podcast. His approach is you take each case individually and you work with the people at the university, the athletes that are impacted by this, and come up with a strategy. But I can only imagine that they're just gaining more and more information, and each success breeds more confidence that if this were to happen again, they have a template to go off of for the next one, and they have momentum at their side. If you were taking losses in these cases, then the enthusiasm would certainly drop, and the tendency would be for people to say, oh, that's just how it is. I guess I'll transfer, or I guess I'll just let it be turned into a club team. But now with all the winning, I think that just begets more winning, and I think it's going to create a situation where athletic departments are more hesitant to make this decision in the first place, which is ultimately what they want.
Yeah. It's like, hey, if we have to choose any sport, don't choose this one. So.
Mm-hmm.